One cell, two inmates, and a secret that changed everything. If you're stepping into this story for the first time, brace yourself. Nothing here is what it seems. And if you're the type who likes your crime stories cold, twisted, and unforgettable, go ahead and hit subscribe, because what happens in this cell should have never been possible. The story begins on a frigid night in November 2013, when the sound of sirens tore through the industrial outskirts of Cedar Ridge, a small western town known more for its prisons than its people. Police cruisers poured onto an old service road leading straight toward an empty warehouse, once a shipping hub, now a silent, hollow landmark. Moments earlier, a 911 caller had reported strange movement inside, describing two men running, one carrying a metal box. When officers stormed in, they didn't find two men. They found one. Injured, panicked, coughing dust into the cold air. His name was Evan Mercer, 23 years old, arrested for a minor electronics theft just weeks earlier. Officers shined their flashlights across the warehouse floor, illuminating scattered footprints, abandoned tools, and a trail of disturbed dust leading toward a broken window. Whoever Evan had been with had escaped. Evan swore he wasn't part of whatever had happened inside. He claimed he'd been forced into the building, confronted by a stranger looking for something Evan knew nothing about. But investigators found no signs of a second suspect. And when they searched Evan, they found a folded slip of paper hidden in his sock, an address, a date, and a symbol that looked like a drawn-out spiral. Evan denied writing it. He said he'd never seen it before. But it was enough to place him in holding until they could sort everything out. Across the county, another arrest had unfolded just hours before. Lucas Hale, age 37, charged with orchestrating a sophisticated financial scam involving offshore shell companies and falsified identities. Detectives called him clever, manipulative, and always 3 steps ahead. He rarely raised his voice, yet somehow controlled every room he walked into. His victims ranged from small businesses to everyday families, each drained of savings without even realizing it. With the jail overcrowded, transfers began that same night. And through a coincidence that would later seem impossible, Evan Mercer, the confused young man found in the warehouse, was placed into the same cell as Lucas Hale, the man authorities considered one of the most meticulous fraud operators they had ever encountered. At first glance, they couldn't have been more different. Evan was quiet, anxious, and visibly shaken by whatever had happened before his arrest. Lucas seemed almost calm, as if already analyzing every detail of the place he would be living in for the next several months. He greeted Evan with a nod, introduced himself politely, and went back to reading a newspaper as if sharing a cell were merely another business transaction. But in the days that followed, strange moments began to surface. Small coincidences that neither man could explain. The questions Lucas asked were oddly specific. The way he looked at Evan held a familiarity that didn't make sense. And one evening, as the guards made their final walkthrough, Lucas murmured a sentence that froze Evan in place. "You don't remember me," he said softly. "But I remember you." Evan stared at him, confused, insisting they had never met. Lucas didn't argue. He simply gave a thin, knowing smile and returned to his bunk. 2 days later, detectives reopened Lucas Hale's financial case, digging deeper into old victims, past transactions, and irregular leads. And in one of the archived files, between receipts and falsified invoices, investigators found a name. A name they didn't expect. Evan Mercer. But before they could question either man, something happened inside that cell. Something that would unravel a hidden connection linking them long before the arrests. And when the guards finally opened the cell door that night, what they discovered would change the entire investigation. The moment the guards opened the cell door, the tension inside felt sharp enough to cut through steel. Evan was standing against the far wall, breathing hard, his hands trembling as though he'd just seen a ghost. Lucas sat calmly on the lower bunk, elbows on his knees, his expression unreadable. Nothing in the room appeared disturbed, yet the air carried a heaviness that made the officers instantly suspicious. When asked what happened, Evan stuttered that they'd only argued. Lucas said nothing at all. The officers sensed something deeper but, with no visible violation, they shut the door and moved on. It wasn't until the prison psychologist made her weekly rounds that the truth began to surface. Evan asked to speak with her privately, his voice low and shaky. He explained that Lucas had said something that didn't make sense, but felt too specific to ignore. "Why did he say he remembers me?" Evan asked. "How could he remember me? I've never met him." The psychologist encouraged him to stay calm, promising to alert investigators. But even she felt something unsettling in Evan's retelling, a tension that hinted at more than coincidence. Across the facility, detectives were unraveling new layers of Lucas Hale's financial crimes. The more they dug, the more complicated his scheme became. It wasn't just stolen credit lines or fabricated invoices anymore. There were personal accounts involved, regular people whose lives had been quietly drained, their losses hidden through expertly timed transactions. One victim name kept resurfacing, Evan Mercer, targeted nearly 4 years before Lucas's arrest. He had no idea. His bank records showed withdrawals he'd assumed were bank errors. He'd been 18 at the time, working part-time at a repair shop, barely making enough to notice when $50 disappeared here and there. By the time he realized something was wrong, the trail was too faint to follow. The bank issued a correction, reimbursed part of the missing funds, and the case drifted into a drawer no one opened again. Until now. Detectives were stunned when they saw the timeline. Lucas Hale had been operating at full strength during that period. His victim profile matched Evan perfectly: young, working class, overlooked. But the strangest part wasn't the connection itself, it was the transaction logs. One specific withdrawal from Evan's account had been tagged internally by the bank with a small, almost invisible notation: manual override required. Someone had personally intervened to complete that transaction. Someone who knew Evan's identity. Someone who had chosen him. Back in the cell, the atmosphere grew tighter with each passing night. Lucas began asking questions that felt carefully designed. Questions about Evan's past jobs, old addresses, even details Evan barely remembered himself. Evan avoided answering, but the realization crept closer with every conversation. Lucas didn't just remember him. He remembered everything. One evening, while the facility buzzed with activity from a surprise inspection, Lucas finally broke the silence. He spoke with the same calm tone he used when discussing weather or food schedules, yet every word had weight. "You were my first," he said quietly. Evan felt his stomach drop. "First what?" Lucas continued staring at the floor, fingers tapping lightly against his knee. "The first account I ever infiltrated on my own," he said. "The first time I realized how easy it was." Evan felt the world tilt. Memories he had buried came rushing back, letters he never opened, fees he didn't understand, the embarrassment of trying to explain the withdrawals no one believed he didn't make. Lucas watched the realization hit him, offering no apology, no emotion. "I didn't know your name back then," Lucas added. "Not until they reopened my case. Then I saw it again. Mercer. And suddenly there you were. In my cell." Evan felt trapped, cornered by a truth he never expected. He wanted to shout, to strike, to demand answers, but all he could do was stare. Lucas leaned back on the bunk, folding his arms. "And that," he said softly, "isn't even the part that should worry you." Before Evan could respond, alarms blared through the facility. Lights flashed. Officers ran past the cell as radios crackled with urgent updates. Something had happened, something that pulled every guard to the East Wing. Inside the locked cell, Lucas gave a faint, chilling smile. Because whatever was unfolding outside was connected to what he was about to reveal next. The alarms echoed through every hallway, bouncing off concrete walls and vibrating through the metal bunks. Red lights flashed in rapid pulses, turning everything inside the cell into a stuttering nightmare of shadows and frantic color. Evan rushed to the bars, gripping them so hard his knuckles turned white. Lucas stayed seated, watching the chaos with a strange, reflective calm. Through the noise, the PA system crackled, barely audible beneath the rising tension. "Code Blue, East Wing. Repeat Code Blue." Evan's pulse hammered. "What's happening? What did you do?" Lucas didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood slowly, walked to the small metal desk in the corner, and retrieved something from beneath a stack of forms, something Evan hadn't seen before. A thin envelope. Plain. Unmarked. So, he held it out. "This," Lucas said, "is what the alarms are about. And it concerns you more than anyone else in this building." Evan stepped back, shaking his head. "No. No more games." "This isn't a game," Lucas replied. "It never was." Outside, boots thundered past the cell. Officers shouted orders. Someone yelled for medical support. The entire facility plunging into a controlled panic. Something rare, something dangerous. Lucas placed the envelope on the desk between them. "Those files they reopened?" he continued. "They didn't tell you everything. About why I targeted you. About who pointed me toward your account." Evan stared at the envelope like it might explode. Lucas exhaled deeply, the first sign of genuine emotion Evan had seen from him. "Back then, when I was still learning the trade, someone hired me to access a batch of accounts. Nothing major. Small withdrawals to test the system. Your name wasn't random. You were chosen." "Chosen by who?" Evan demanded. Lucas looked him directly in the eyes. "Someone who wanted to know if you were trustworthy." The words made no sense. Evan's breath grew shallow. Trustworthy for what? Before Lucas could answer, the cell door slid open with a violent clang. Officers swarmed in, 3 of them, armored and tense. One grabbed Evan, pulling him back. Another pinned Lucas against the wall. The third scanned the cell, eyes darting from the envelope to the 2 inmates. "Envelope," the lead officer said. "Where did that come from?" Lucas stayed silent. "Take them both," the officer commanded. "Warden wants them in separate rooms, now." Evan was dragged down the hallway, struggling to keep his footing. The facility buzzed with frantic movement. At the far end of the corridor, he caught a glimpse of medics wheeling out a stretcher carrying an unconscious guard, face pale, uniform stained with dust. Something huge had happened, and somehow, Lucas was tied to it. Evan was pushed into an interrogation room, a bare concrete box with a single metal chair. A detective entered seconds later, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a voice steady enough to command the entire building. "Evan," she said, sitting across from him, "we need to talk about that envelope." "I didn't open it," Evan replied. "I didn't even touch it." "We know," she said. "We watched the footage. But you need to know what was inside." She slid a photocopy across the table. It was a list of names. 36 names. Evan scanned them, confused, until he reached the bottom. There, circled in red ink, was his. Then underneath it, written in small, precise handwriting, "Primary asset confirmed. Proceed to phase 2. Evan felt ice creep through his veins. "Asset for what?" The detective leaned forward. "We believe Lucas wasn't working alone. Someone fed him data. Someone outside these walls. Tonight's breach in the East Wing? We think it was staged to distract our staff so someone could access Lucas's archived correspondence." "And the envelope?" Evan whispered. "It was meant for delivery," she said. "To someone on the outside. And Lucas kept it hidden, until now." Evan's mind spun. "But why me? Why was I on that list?" The detective hesitated. "Because," she said carefully, "your name isn't just on the list. You're at the center of it. Whoever orchestrated the scam used your identity years before Lucas stole from you. You were impersonated long before any of this started. It's why Lucas recognized you.